Oh, that's going to be.
Well, it's scribbling.
No. We donated it.
This meeting is now live.
Good morning. Let me first apologize for the delay. We were supposed to start about 9:30, so we had to make some adjustments here on timing. So how's that?
If you place it towards you.
Is that better? Okay. So as I was saying, thank you for bearing with us. We're starting a little bit late. Time is 10:02 at this time. So as I'd like to do, and as we do on the Sybil Brand Commission, we'd like to start off the meeting with a land acknowledgement. So the Los Angeles County Land Acknowledgement, the County of Los Angeles recognizes that we occupied land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano, Kiz, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past and present, and emerging as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in land seizure, disease, subjugation, slavery, relocation, broken promises, genocide, and multi-generational trauma. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands. We are dedicated to growing and sustaining relationships with Native peoples and local tribal governments, including the Fernando Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, Gabrielino, Tongva Indians of California Tribal Council, Gabrielino, Tongva, San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, Gabrielino, Band of Mission Indians, Kiz Nation, San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, San Fernando Band of Mission Indians. To learn more about the First Peoples of Los Angeles County, please visit the Los Angeles City County Native American Indian Commission website at www.lanaic.lacounty.gov. So with that, can we go ahead and have roll call? Here.
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 Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Thank you. We're going to move on to agenda item number 2, public comment rules.
Additional commissioner.
Yeah.
Additional.
After Kenny gets present.
So thank you for that. So can we go get public comment rules?
Good morning and welcome. If you wish to speak in person at today's meeting, please turn in your public comment card at the table with the public comment sign. If you requested to provide a public comment on a specific agenda item, please ensure to mark your focused, please ensure your remarks are focused on that agenda item only. If you have comments on a different topic within the subject matter jurisdiction, please save them for your general public comment period, which will occur at a later time in the meeting. If you are remote, please raise your hand in WebEx and press *2 on the phone. Each person who signs up for a public comment will have 2 minutes to speak. Please note that the chair may adjust the time allotted to less than 2 minutes for each public comment, depending on the number of individuals who have public comment. For each agenda item, I will call the public comment after commissioner discussion on the item. General public comments will be heard at the end of the meeting agenda under non-agenda public comment. Now I will turn it over to Sheriff Civilian Oversight Commission member Daniel Delgadillo, who will announce the public comment rules in Spanish.
Hola, buenos días. Le damos la bienvenida a esta reunión a miembros de la comunidad quienes prefieren hacer sus comentarios en español. Les daremos 3 minutos y podemos proveer traducción al inglés. Simplemente diga la palabra español antes de comenzar sus comentarios y le diremos cómo proceder. Gracias.
Thank you. Our next item of business should be doing roll call for the commission staff for the COC. However, there is no quorum for them to be here, but I'd still like to acknowledge at least the people who are here from the COC and thank them for being here. Could someone take roll for those that are here?
Vice Chair Hans Johnson,
Present as special guest.
Commissioner James P. Harris, Commissioner Patricia Giggins,
Present, more special than Hans, thank you.
Commissioner Jamon Hicks,
Present, most special.
other commissioners that are absent, Chair Robert Bonner, absent, Co-Vice Chair Luis Garcia, absent, Commissioner Arthur Callaway, absent, Commissioner Irma Cooper, absent, Commissioner Sean Kennedy, absent.
And an additional special guest is here, Commissioner JP Harris.
She mentioned it.
She did.
She did. She did.
I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. I had a hand here, Commissioner Frutos.
Mr. Chair, if we can acknowledge the sheriff's captain and the lieutenant for the meeting, the members of the public, what they're representing within the sheriff's department at our meeting.
Would you like to introduce yourselves and your role in for today? And we thank you for being here.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Captain Darrell Walker from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, most specifically Custody Support Services Bureau.
And good morning, commissioners and public. My name is Commander Jaredette Montoya, and I'm from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, overseeing Custody Division General Population.
Okay, thank you. For our work in the jails, these will be kind of our partners out there, and we're happy to see you all here today. Okay, our next agenda item is going to be an overview of the commissions. We have a section here to talk a little bit about the Civilian Oversight Commission. Does anyone like to kind of just talk a little bit about the Civilian Oversight for the benefit of our people?
Thank you, Commissioner, Commission Chair. I'm Hans Johnson, Co-Vice Chair of the COC, and I'm pleased to be joined by 3 other members of our commission, as well as our Executive Director, Charmaine Mosley. The Civilian Oversight Commission of Los Angeles County was constituted in 2016. The commission is authorized by Chapter 3.79 of the Los Angeles County Code to improve public transparency and accountability with respect to the county sheriff's department. by providing robust opportunities for community engagement, ongoing analysis and oversight of the department's policies, practices, and procedures. And we also advise the Board of Supervisors, the Sheriff's Department, and the public. Today, we are here to learn more about very important issues from a variety of speakers, and I'm pleased to be here with our participation in this important channel for the public to learn more about how we can collaborate, but also to understand further the very valuable role of the SBC in its own function of accountability with custody in particular of the Sheriff's Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me give you a quick overview about the Sybil Brand Commission. We have been here for quite a few years. I wish I had the number on the top of my head. Unfortunately, I don't. But if that is of interest, we'd be happy to get it to you. But let me kind of let you know what we do and how we do it. We go into the jail facilities that are under the responsibility of the Sheriff's Department, which means that we're looking at the main jail facilities that you'll see downtown. Off of, for the women's, they'll be in Linwood, North County. And we go in there and we look at the conditions and we file our report so that in turn we can make sure that the conditions of our jail facilities are situated so that our incarcerated are in a situation in a humane environment. What we end up doing is that we look at all the different things that we have, that we look in as far as an inspection report, and we report back to the watch commander, the hierarchy. We file a report. The reports are reviewed at our monthly meetings, and then in turn they become public knowledge. There is an expectation that when we express that there are improvements to be made at visits and things like that, that we are hoping that we will get those improvements done in a timely manner. So this is something that we do every time we go out and do inspections. Now, there are 10 of us who do these inspections. We are asked to do no more than 2 inspections per month. We usually do them in partnership with another commissioner. And so we're out there pretty much going throughout the county to all the different facilities. And let me emphasize that it's not just the main jail facilities that we look at and inspect. We're also going out to the station facilities and look at their holding locations within the jail facilities, in addition to the holding facilities that we find at our criminal courts building. So we have a large responsibility to make sure that we are going out, looking at them, and making sure that they all, there is an expectation that they all treat all the incarcerated humanely and in an environment that is safe for everyone. We also are available, or when we do this, we have full access to any facility we visit 24/7. If someone or a team goes out tonight at 1 a.m. in the morning to do an inspection, there is nothing to prevent us from doing that inspection at that time. That's just an example. We have access over weekends, holidays, 24/7. So we have the authority to go in and do these inspections. And let me tell you that our inspections are unescorted. We have full range of the ability to get in there and actually look without being shown where we're going, what we should see, and whatever. And we make sure that we see it all, from kitchen facilities to the way they transport the individuals to court dates and things like that. We make sure that we try to hit as many spots as we can. And we have conversations with those individuals who are incarcerated. We will talk to them and they will talk to us. And that is the basis of our reports. We have the expectation that when we bring something to the hierarchy, to the leadership of a jail facility, that those things that can be remedied and fixed, our expectation is that they do it immediately, quickly, and report back to us. That is our expectation. We are hoping and continue to hope that as we move forward, that time that it takes for us to get our reports back will be less and less and less. When we do our inspections, we can go back and re-inspect, but we have to spend time not inspecting. And please correct me, anyone if I'm saying this wrong, but we cannot re-inspect the same location for at least 30 days if I'm correct. So that's the expectation that we have, that when we make an inspection, we will be able to know that these things that we highlight will be fixed. Now, some issues at times will take a little bit longer. It requires other county facilities or other county departments. We rely on them. So we hope that we are able to go out there and emphasize that we need the assistance of these outside agencies and departments to help in getting these facilities remedied and fixed. I think that's kind of a quick overview of what we do, how we do it. And I'm going to tell you that we have a dedicated group of commissioners that do this on a regular basis. Many of them have full-time jobs. We are not paid. We are not paid to do this. We do this because we have a dedication to our community to make sure that those who are incarcerated are in an environment that is safe, clean, and humane. So with that said, I think I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next item on our agenda. Let me ask, do we have any do we require public comment after this presentation?
There are no public comments on this item.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move down to our next item, item number 5. These are educational presentations, and these will be taken, these presentations will be from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Our first one is overview of forms of employee media and video use in the jails. And who will be taking that?
Good morning again.
Morning.
So all right. So in looking at that specific item, I was able to do a little bit of research. In looking at the policy, we have several policies that somewhat address this specific topic, but I nailed it down more specifically to the 7 or 8 that I have here listed. We have 2 under our manual policy and procedures. We have the use of communications equipment, and we have a prohibitions of equipment policy, which specifically mentions approved usage of some of these forms of media, social media, computer use, access, and those things. And then specifically to custody, we have our several custody division manual policies. We have 5 different ones here. We have security of personal property, wireless communication devices, social media use, personal bags, and viewing of movies by inmates and department personnel. So for each of these different policies, there's a different range of accountability that may be expected of employees, and there's also associated guidelines of discipline for any violations of these specific policies. And that always ranges from written reprimand all the way to discharge. But for the individual policies, they all have their own individual ranges. I did a little bit of a word search. I used 15 specific keywords to search existing administrative investigations within I checked the first quarter of 2024, all of 2023, and all of 2022, based on the 15 keywords that I searched just to try to find potential administrative investigations that would specifically address these topics. I searched property, social media, movies, television, TV, music, wireless device, cellular, computer, internet, web, post, and phone. During that time period, I was able to locate 14 actual administrative investigations that relate to this topic, 13 involving sworn subjects and 3 involving civilian subjects. Of those, they kind of were broken down by quarter to quarter, with some of the discipline ranges being, again, some people receive things as little as written reprimands for bringing in cellular devices where they weren't authorized. Some received as much as discharge for unauthorized use of some of our systems in specific to our custody environment. Was there any further questions or anything on that?
Apologies.
No worries.
Any questions from the table? No? Any questions from the audience?
We have questions.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for being here. And maybe this is not part of your presentation, but I know that I've gone on many inspections in both, I can visually see it at NCCF, Men's Central Jail, and the Twin Towers, where I have seen staff watching movies on the computer, like just hanging out. And I just want to understand why, and maybe it's in the policy, but why that would even be available to them to look at. Is there, like,
Right.
technologically, why is that something that they can even access?
Because there's other needs to view those types of videos from those computers, be it for training or other examples, but there are policies that prohibit just regular watching of movies and things at their workstations.
But so I guess, I mean, I live with a high school teacher, and I know, for example, their computers block a lot of stuff, like you can't watch certain YouTube things and stuff at
Right.
school. And so I don't understand, I'm just trying to understand why the department isn't just making that not available. to
Are you saying
people.
just
So
like, for example, totally blocking YouTube?
I don't think you have to totally block YouTube. I don't really understand why a sheriff deputy would need to watch any YouTube while on duty, because we always hear how busy they are and how they can't get everything done because they're understaffed. So I
Right.
don't get that, but I guess I would like to know why it's not just blocked.
Are you talking specifically like a website like YouTube?
I'm not a technology person, but I guess I would like to know why, rather than having policies where it has to be something that someone's caught and investigated, why isn't it just blocked?
Okay. I just need you to kind of clarify when you say, why isn't it blocked? What
Why is a movie, a Michael Bay movie, I don't know how they're watching it, available to be watched at the IRC?
Right. So I think that that's where the kind of the question will come in at, because there's peripheral devices that may be used for those computers. For example, say like a flash drive, where they may keep reports or other things of that nature. And sometimes those same forms of media are used to bring in movies. And that's when it has to be addressed.
Okay. And YouTube?
We actually have our own department YouTube site where we actually have training videos and things of that nature. So unfortunately, I mean, we could look at blocking some things, and there are some websites in other areas that are completely blocked where they can't even access it, even outside of the custody areas. We can't even access them. But there are some things that have actual direct work-related use, and we still use those things openly.
That makes sense. I guess I could see a YouTube video maybe in another area where you're, at training
Right.
in an office, but when you're on the floor with people who are incarcerated who, can't get to the shower, but somebody still has time to watch a YouTube training video, doesn't really, I guess I don't understand that.
Okay.
Any other, Vice Chair?
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I have a couple of questions for you. First, I'll give a little overview. Last week, was it, Commissioner Kumpian and I were at Twin Towers. And we were in the urgent care area, and there was somebody there on the job who had a browser screen open. They were watching a movie open on the floor. There were people who were waiting to be seen for medical care. There was a sign on the wall that said, make sure you're standing next to the person that you brought up here and make sure that they are not out of your sight and that you're monitoring them 24/7. When we walked in, those two people were not being monitored. They were by themselves. There was the deputies watching the film on the TV, on the computer screen. But when we went over to start speaking with those two individuals who are waiting for medical care, then the deputies got up from their movie, came over and said, we have to stand next to you because we're supposed to be watching them 24/7. And so our concern, of course, is the movie. 2, that the policy was not being followed. And 3, my real question for you is, what is the policy? Does it say movies are not allowed at all? Does it say types of movies? Kind of what is the wording of this policy and how is it enforced?
Right. Okay. So for that specific example, without the details or to know what those deputies were doing, where they were from, unfortunately, urgent care is one of those areas where deputies from different facilities may go. So I don't have all the details for that specific case, but I will say that generally the watching of non-work related movies on a computer would be prohibited for a deputy, just across the board. Now, for as far as them not standing there or providing proper security or for the escorts, that's an issue that unfortunately, if you encounter something like that, please, to the best of your ability, bring that to the awareness of the supervisor so it can be immediately addressed. And that's how we would enforce things from there. But when those occurrences happen, typically what we'll start with is an inquiry to get the details of what was going on, exactly what should have been happening. And then from there, we'll either initiate an administrative investigation and then discipline will go from there, or they'll make a decision if there's some other remedy that can be taken on the front end.
I will say that every single time I have gone into any of the facilities in the months that I've been a member of this commission, I have seen at least 2 instances of people watching movies on their screens, including more salacious images on their screens. And so with that, if we're seeing it every single time we're doing our inspections, it's clearly a more culture problem, rampant problem that the policy is not working to cover. So what is the Sheriff's Department doing right now that can work to improve that?
Yeah, that will be challenging for me to answer at this time because oftentimes these things, instances like this, it require notification and addressing it in that moment. So we can pursue more active measures of trying to, I guess, audit and look for those things. But ultimately, oftentimes we need the assistance of other people to advise us for those things when they occur.
So I have been on the commission since January, cleared to inspect since I think March, April. And so in the 12 inspections that I've done, every single one of those has had that issue. So the question is just what will the department do to really start to address that issue? Because what we're seeing, such as the example I gave with the more salacious imagery, is that there are clear cases of neglect happening where the needs of those who are incarcerated are not being addressed because deputies are watching films, which is against your policy.
Right, I understand. So when you mention the more salacious, are you speaking of the Men's Central Jail incident?
Yes.
Right. Based on that incident, there was an inquiry conducted and there's an administrative investigation that's ongoing at this time.
I am
And that's-
participating in that investigation.
Well, that's the proper way for us to address those issues when they occur.
Thank you.
Can I ask, does the Sheriff's Department have the ability, you mentioned it would be difficult to track what deputies might be doing without an audit. Is there an audit of screens or department issued devices to be able to track what deputies might or may not be watching? It feels like this is all part of, this must all be tied to a technology issue. And I'm wondering, is there anything that the department can do to be able to track or to block the ability for deputies to even access some of the sites that Commissioner Varela was talking about, YouTube, social media such as Instagram, Facebook, things like that. Can you speak to what those measures are that the department, is currently undertaking and what might be possible on department issued devices?
Well, that's a little bit outside of the scope of what I had here, information-wise. That would be a broader department conversation. But kind of like I mentioned, there are some websites and areas that are completely blocked because there's no known department use for those areas or those websites or applications. But there are other things where there are actual appropriate department uses, and that makes it a little bit more challenging.
Can you explain what those prohibitions are, and so that we can better understand where there might be holes in terms of those prohibitions to make recommendations to the department as to potentially what should be prohibited as an adopted policy, or where, based on our investigations, we're seeing the gaps?
Right. I'd have to return with a better answer on that. I don't want to just speak from my own understanding. I want to address it specifically from the policy. But as I mentioned, there's probably about 8 different policies that cover this to some extent, and it may give better understanding of where those, those concerns may be. But as I mentioned, it's essentially where it lies. There are some appropriate usages, and there's a need for those.
So would you be able to provide the policies that currently exist so we can review them? And would you be able to come back or provide an answer as to, what is currently prohibited, so that potentially the commission, if need be, might be able to make recommendations based on investigations the commission has done where we are seeing the gaps with related social media use?
I could provide a list of the policies right now. If you would like me to send someone a copy after this meeting, I can do that as well.
That would be helpful.
Which one would be preferable? Do you want the list or you want me to?
Policies.
So policies.
So send someone after the meeting?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
I think Violetta is over here and you can connect with her to send it in. I really appreciate the research you did. I had one question for you is when on the floor and things like that, you said like the supervisor, who is the person who's supposed to be enforcing at the facilities that this type of misconduct isn't happening? And excuse my ignorance.
No worries. So the general command of that facility during the day-to-day operation is going to be on the watch commander, which typically is a lieutenant. Sometimes it'll be a sergeant working in that capacity. But in each individual area, there should be floor supervisors, either floor sergeants, sometimes supervising line deputies that also act in those capacities. So when these occurrences come up, as quickly as possible, it's great to get, made aware of those things so that they can be addressed.
Thank you. Thank you for being the brave soul that they sent here to represent this.
No worries.
Especially in
I just wish I had a better answer specifically on that. So, yeah.
the last thing that I was going to ask also before I pass it over to Commissioner Frutos was, at the last inspection that we did at North County, the watch commander actually had football on one of his screens, had the Ohio State game, which I was sad to be missing, but I wasn't working my job that I'm being paid for. And if that's the case, then do you know who we report that to?
Yeah, that would be the unit commander.
The unit commander.
Right.
Okay.
So was that already reported?
It will be in the report for the North County report.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little challenging there,
Yeah.
right? Because if that's the on-duty manager of the facility, it's kind of hard.
Right.
Who do you deal with that? So that's unfortunate. But yeah, that's who that should be reported to, is the facilities unit commander.
And
to
so,
address
and
that.
we would, when we're on the inspection, we can ask the watch commander to speak to that person? Or
No,
we get their
because they
information?
typically wouldn't be present Depending on the hours of the day. If it's after hours, the unit commander is typically there during, Monday through Friday,
Business.
regular
Mhm.
business hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we would ask them for that person's information, the unit commander
Right.
information. Okay, thank you for that intel.
Thank you, Captain, for fielding these very tough questions.
No problem.
In a nutshell, when we walk in, we do an inspection and we're seeing the deputies watching television, whatever it is, we talk about it and it's definitely not related to their 10-hour shift assignment. That's where we're kind of coming from, Captain, of all our frustrations that the deputies are watching television and we know it's not department training. We know it's a movie or it's a football game. We're just more interested, what are the checks and balances and what policy should we refer to the watch commander when we're there to say, hey, by the way, we were in, block 1, 2, 3, 4, and we noticed that the deputy at the desk was heavily involved watching television. That's our concern in a nutshell, sir. But thank you for handling these very tough questions.
Right. No, I understand. It's definitely a complicated issue when, we are at significant staffing shortages and it may not appear like to be so if we're watching TV when we could be doing other things, but I understand. I'll get those policies to the appropriate source and then we'll go from there.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Okay, the first public
Just
comment.
make sure that we have no other, and then we'll call for public comment afterwards, okay? Thank you. So asking if there's any other questions coming from the table, around the table? No, seeing no hands. Can we ask for public comment?
The first public comment is from Wanda Solomon.
I'd need more information to answer that because I'm still not sure what this is. Not to be, it's kind of confusing to answer the question because I'm not sure what they were watching or what was happening at that time. I don't have any information about that specific incident that occurred, so it would be challenging for me to answer what they were doing or what they should have been doing in that moment. Okay. I'm not sure if there's a mechanism that they get it to the public, but
Yeah.
Okay.
It will be included in I think with the minutes from the agenda from this meeting, so it'll be public information.
Our next public comment is from John Davis.
Good morning. I just have a question for the officer and the commission. When we was, I guess, two of you was talking about when you walked in, they was watching a football game or they're watching something on TV. For the officer, I'm sure the department has a policy of officers engaging maybe in watching TV or maybe watching something on their phone. I don't know. That's the policy. That's a question that the officer can ask. The question I do want to ask is, what is the percentage? I guess when you guys walk into the jail facility, what is the percentage as you, I'm hearing you walked in at one time? Is it on an occasion like hey, when we walked in, like 50% of the time, and just using for example, that officers are actually watching something on the screen or on their phones. What is the percentage that you have that you can tell the public on that? I know in reality, in real time, every company has employees do something, watching something on their phone or on their TV, and there is a policy. There is a policy. Don't do it, or next time you do it, we write you up. There is a policy. So maybe we need to know what their policy is with that. First time offense, second time offense, we don't know because no one's not saying it. So maybe we need to go a little bit deep on that so we can get a better understanding. We're trying to punish someone for watching TV, but I'm sure there's a policy of why these officers probably shouldn't be watching TV or doing anything on their phone. We don't know. So I think it's only fair that the Sheriff's Department has a policy. We need to know what that policy is before we go and say what we shouldn't do, because I work for a company and I can tell you, my employees, sometimes I walk in, they should be doing something for the job,
Thank
but
you.
they're on their phone. Thank you.
Next public comment is from Lupe Hervias.
Advocating here for the people with mental health. I did not even know the jails had this issue with videos and people watching videos, but I just want to say this from experience, and I'm speaking on behalf of my son and on behalf of the people with mental illness. I know people, when they go to the men's central jails, they get beat up. I've seen it on my son. I know people in Twin Towers, they get, my son waited days to get a blanket after I repeatedly requested for him to be given a blanket. So with that, there's a lot of issues and concerns that I have, because these are people with mental illness. Somehow they get caught up into the system and they can't get out. And, you know, there's a lot of frustration because I have not been able to speak to anyone about the situation, but I'm glad you guys are having this meeting, because these are the people that really need the most. And as you know, when they go to one of these jails, they get placed on hold for about 3 days, not being given a cell while who knows what they're going. Obviously, they're not in the best state of mind. At that time, that's when they need that help. They don't get processed well. Mentally, they're scared. Mentally, they do not even know what happened to them. And they're sitting there while they're saying they're watching TV, videos, whatever. I'm not here, I really don't care about the videos. I'm here to advocate people that have mental illness and how to treat it, and the beat-ups that they receive by other inmates and the abuse that goes in there. It's horrible. It's horrible, and I really, you know, the bigger picture is that these people are there because they committed a crime.
Thank you.
But they're really the victim.
Thank you. We have 5 online public comments. First one is from Henry Manzini. Henry, you are now unmuted. You are now unmuted, Henry.
Yes, hello, board. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, board. I appreciate it. My name is Henry Marini. I'm coming to you from the great state of New York, and I am here to offer public comment today on the important issue of Scientology terrorizing Angelenos and the collusion of the LAPD with Scientology. I have been swatted as part of my public criticism of Scientology. Another gentleman who is a protester by the name of Scott Hochstetter, also known as DOA on YouTube, has also been swatted repeatedly. We know who the swatter is. We've reported it to the LAPD countless times. They refuse to take action. And not only that, We also have a child predator by the name of Anthony D'Amato, who has an active restraining order on him and has actively swatted and sexually stalked and harassed a minor who is also a critic of Scientology publicly. And yet the LAPD, particularly the Wilshire PD, refuses to do absolutely nothing. Scientology has its tentacles in just about every government entity in all of LA, and it's absolutely disgusting. Right now, you have a couple thousand people watching the stream. This is not a protest movement that will go away. This is not some ham-hocked protesters either. This is a very serious matter. We have court cases very succinctly documenting child slave labor being used by Scientology to do all manner of heavy construction on LRH Way intersecting Fountain
Henry?
Avenue. We
Henry,
have
is this related to this item or is this a general public comment?
people that are actively ignoring this and issuing bogus criminal charges to withhold protesters, and you need to address this. LAPD is in collusion with Scientology,
Chair.
and I urge you to
Mr. Chair.
take this seriously. Thank you.
This call is really not related to the topic of the agenda. I'd like to get back to the agenda item, Mr. Chair.
Can we get it back to the agenda?
The next public comment is from Coriana Johnson. Coriana, you have been unmuted.
I'm just calling on the behalf of neglect and within the LASD jail cells. On June 5th, my uncle Eugene Youngblood was arrested and was supposed to be picked up for a misdemeanor charge, where we got a phone call 2 a.m. that night from a homicide detective stating that he was deceased in his jail cell. In the event of, it was unknown. We were told by LASD that they gave him 2 cans of Narcans because they thought he was under some type of medical influence, which he was not. They said that they had did a wellness check around 9 p.m. and when they came back around 9:30, he was deceased. We have somebody who was incarcerated with him at that time who said they did not do no wellness check and that Eugene was not under any type of medical influence. When we went to go ask to view his body, they would not let us view his body. They said that you do not want to see your uncle like this. If he was picked up on a misdemeanor charge and was supposed to be cited out when we called the station, why did any of this even occur? We know that it was some type of form of neglect and possibly abuse. When we were able to view his body, my mother, they met her inside of a parking lot in front of the men's prison. I'm unaware of which prison this is, but it is located in Antelope Valley, where we were only showed a picture of his body with him being visible of a black eye and his nose being twisted with a tear coming out of his tear duct. So with that being said, we know that it was some type of abuse and neglect that happened behind his death within that jail cell. And I just want his death to be properly investigated with everything that's going on. Thank you.
Okay, the next public comment is from Benny. Benny, do you have a public comment on this agenda item?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just waiting for the timer. It seems like the department is taking their time to acknowledge that there's an issue. It seems like, there's a security issue if any USB can be attached to these computers with confidential data information. And also you can have videos uploaded onto these computers with any USB. Instead of maybe serializing certain USBs for trainers who provide these videos, it doesn't seem like these policies are enforced, and if anything, they're probably skirted by supervisors who just don't want to do the extra step. That's just what my experience was while I was in the military, and I was actually in charge of security accounts. And these accounts are supposed to be meant for certain individuals to have access to these, and others who are supposed to be vigilant, apparently, during their job, are not supposed to have access to those serialized USBs, even these computers. I mean, that's the reason why they're blocked, right? Because there's a likelihood that they might wander off onto these other screens and these other videos. It just doesn't seem like anyone's willing to enforce it unless there's more resources. And almost every single plight by the LASD, all I hear is resources, resources. If we get more resources, because our resources are not sufficient, we can use more resources to see if we can begin to implement current and effectively enforce it for more resources. It just doesn't really sit right with me that a lot of these programs for record keeping tend to have record keeping built in, so you know who has access to it, instead of giving all out access to the internet. So shout out to the families that are there. Thank you. Affected families are why I do any of this.
Thank you. Next online public comment is from Raquel Derfler. Raquel, do you have a public comment on this agenda item? You have been unmuted.
Okay, can you everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good morning. Raquel Derfler with Cancel the Contract out in the Antelope Valley. I'm here to discuss the mysterious death of Eugene Youngblood here in the Lancaster Sheriff Station's jail.
Raquel, that would be general public comments.
No, but I want to speak to the fact that,
That's going to be either the next agenda item, conditions of confinement.
It is conditions of confinement. It is conditions. I have questions.
That's the next item.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next public comment is Vanessa Perez. Vanessa, do you have a public comment on this agenda item? You're unmuted.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my name is Vanessa Perez. I'm the mother of Joseph Perez. I want to comment on this item. It's captains like this that they have doing the presentations that are part of the problem. The commissioner should not have to go in a circle just to try to get an answer. These deputies are watching porn, YouTube, OnlyFans, and this is unacceptable. And we should not have to go in circles in order to get an answer from the captains that come and do presentations here on this in these rooms. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further public comments on this item.
Thank you. Looking at these two items, we've hit upon the discipline, and there's actually a request or a desire to find out, just how some of these things are disciplined. Do you have any additional comments under that area, under item B of this?
I mean, I can just run down some of the examples of some of the discipline that has happened as it relates to policies associated with this general area. There was a 5-day suspension given to a deputy for a potential violation of this area. There was a 15-day suspension given to 2 separate deputies for a potential violation of this area. 1-day suspension for a custody assistant, 1-day suspension for a deputy, a 2-day suspension for a deputy. Sergeant was discharged from the department. Deputy received a 1-day suspension, another deputy a 25-day suspension. And I mean, it kind of goes on over the period of time that I searched as it may relate to these specific policies.
How far back did you search?
I did first quarter of 2024 and all of 2023 and all of 2022.
Thank you. Question?
Thank you for that. I have a question and a comment. The question is, were those paid? Were those, what were they called? Suspensions paid? Or did they get paid while they were suspended?
No, ma'am. When you're suspended, it's without pay.
Okay.
So what happens is sometimes when you're relieved of duty, you'll still be getting paid depending on where the case is at, but an actual suspension is without pay.
Okay. And then this is really helpful, and I look forward to the policies because I think we're just seeing, it's really hard for us as commissioners to spot check. And I think there was a question of how often we see it, and we see it a lot, and we're just 10 people who come a couple hours a month, and we see it a lot. And so hopefully the department can take a more proactive approach to identifying these problems rather than catching one person doing an investigation and maybe having a 2-day suspension, but actually trying to address the bigger issue.
Right. I don't want to speak too broadly about the entire department because my expertise is specifically in custody, but
Yeah,
I can tell you
that's
that,
mine too.
well, there are some things that we have done to safeguard it. There were some areas where there were TVs where we've removed them completely, so it's not even accessible. It's not even an option. And we are working to actually prohibit the use of some of the USB ports of computers to go more of a cloud-based solution, which will help alleviate some of those concerns.
That's very helpful.
That's great.
Thank you. Any other question? No? Okay.
I just want to note that there is frustration amongst some of us listening at the lack of ability to cite the policy here and the prohibitions that are being cited for the basis of the suspensions and the discipline that you listed. And I would just note that at a forum of this quality and of this magnitude, with the concern voiced by members of the public and those joining us remotely, that the clear terms of any policy prohibiting misuse of media and of the devices in the jails for purposes of safety and of monitoring incarcerated people and their well-being, that the inability to articulate clearly what that policy and the prohibitions in it is frustrating to many of us listening to the presentation and to the recitation of those penalties, in which language like potential violation is used even in citing the penalties being visited on disobedient deputies. And I just want to note that if this is a presentation before a body of this magnitude and seriousness, that you should be able to cite in specific terms what those prohibitions are and what those penalties should be. The concern being voiced by members of the Sybil Brand Commission, by members of the public here, are of such gravity that you should be able to cite specifics and not merely pledge to come back to us with what those various policies might be. Thank you.
Any questions? Any final questions? Okay. Can we go in, because we kind of opened this up again, can we do public comment for this final item on this section?
There are no additional public comments on this item.
I see a hand up. Can we make sure that you can state your question, but make sure you fill out a speaker card? Okay. You want to give her a mic?
Seems like there is an issue with policies and procedures and corrective actions. However, I feel that there's a bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that they're not providing the service or the job that is needed to help these people. You know, we see so many homeless people on the streets. What happened to them? Were they incarcerated? Were they not provided with the systems needed? That's why I'm speaking here, because I see this all the times, that there's people out there that something happens to them, they end up in the system, and the system is not there to help them. It seems like the jail needs to be reformed. Of what I seen, what I heard, I was scared every day my son was there, scared for his life.
Thank you. I think that brings us to conclusion. Agenda items for the policies here for video. We're going to go on to the next item, and that's a presentation on Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department conditions of confinement. We're going to start off with a member of our Sybil Brand Commission representative who will speak to this, and that will be Vice Chair Broder.
Thank you, Chair. So are the slides on?
I think they're going to start.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here this morning. You should have the slide deck that we'll go through with you, or there are copies of it up by the front. We're going to go through the conditions.
I was just going to say, are we going to be able to project the?
It's loading.
It's loading? Okay.
We're going to go through the conditions of confinement in Los Angeles County jail facilities from the Sybil Brand Commission's inspections. A lot of this will be information that we've taken from inspections over the last few months, but it also encompasses longer information gathered by commissioners over the last many years. So we're going to take you through an introduction of what we do in these inspections, talk through the general conditions of confinement at Men's Central Jail, along with concerns, the general conditions of confinement at CRDF, the Century Regional Detention Facility, and concerns there, as well as follow-up and recommendations that we can provide. So to begin, the Sybil Brand Commission was created to inspect and report on conditions and treatment of adults under the supervision of county custody and care facilities to reflect humane and best practices. With that, we are able to go in, as the chair spoke about earlier, and conduct inspections and share reports afterwards. When we conduct these inspections, we take notes and we bring those notes afterwards to the watch commander immediately after, and we share all of the concerns that we saw. After we share them with the watch commander, we also follow up via email. We will bring medical concerns, if they are shared with us, to Dr. Henderson and to the medical team. We will share any other relevant concerns with the appropriate parties. And we also include these as public reports in our monthly meetings. And so our inspection reports are public, they're on our website, and they are accessible for everybody to go in and read in greater detail. We are permitted to conduct 2 inspections per month per commissioner. As the chair noted, there are 10 commissioners, but not all of us have yet been cleared to enter into the jails by the sheriff's department. And so there are still commissioners who are pending clearance and access, though they were appointed to the commission months ago. So as soon as everybody is cleared to go in, we'll be able to have 10 commissioners doing 2 inspections per month, but at this time, that is not the number that we have. So going into conditions of confinement. This is first going to focus on what we've seen at Men's Central Jail over the past few months. Some of the major concerns are cells, toilets, and sinks. We have reported cases where the water is either scalding hot. We have cases where people have been burned by the hot water and have second-degree burns on their bodies that they've shown to us. We also have cases where the water is freezing cold and they cannot go into the water to shower because they're too cold and will get sick from that. We also observe toilets not draining and flushing, sinks not draining and flushing, and we've been told by the sheriff's department that there's been a huge hire of plumbers over the last few months. So I know that there is a lot of need for sinks and facility and toilet and water support, but that is something that we observe quite a bit of. Major concerns with either the water temperature, the water conditions, and how that is managed. There's also a big issue with crowding in some of the dorms, particularly in the K6G, the LGBTQ dorm within Men's Central Jail. There's triple bunking happening. There were also, last time we were there, people sleeping on the floor because there were not enough low beds for people who had back injuries and were not able to climb into the second and third levels. It's also extremely humid when it's very crowded, and the conditions in that make it so that people who only get a limited amount of clothing per week do not have clean, hygienic clothes to wear. So if they're washing themselves, they're often hanging them on the bunks, which is considered tenting, And there's been tenting operations over the last few months to make sure that they're in compliance and not having tenting. Tenting is where they kind of cover the bunks and then you're not able to see inside the bunk for officers to do their safety checks. That's not always the intention of those incarcerated. It's to be able to hang their clothes, to have them dry often because they're not given a sufficient amount of clothes for the week that can stay clean. So there's certain pieces there with that crowding, humidity, hygiene, cleanliness, and tenting. We're also observing quite a few insufficient safety checks. What we watch is deputies going from cell to cell where they are intending to scan the barcode on the outside of the cell and show that they conducted a safety check there every hour or every half an hour based on the level of need per that designated area. What we see is deputies walking by, not looking inside the cells, and just scanning barcodes. We see this extremely frequently where it's just not conducted properly. Deputies are not looking inside to ensure that the person inside is safe and well. For example, at Men's Central Jail, we observed deputies walk by and conduct a Title IX safety check, without failing to observe that there was a noose inside the cell. Deputies are failing to adequately perform responsibilities in that way by actually conducting the full checks. That includes, as we mentioned previously, watching media instead of security monitors, such as videos, movies, etc. We're also hearing reports from those incarcerated that there's a limited response to grievances. We found grievances in trash cans or no grievance forms available for those incarcerated despite requests. We have requested grievance forms for those incarcerated and given them to them ourselves. We've passed those directly to the watch commander at times because we have heard from those incarcerated that they're not always getting their grievance forms followed up on. We also have concerns about retaliation. As many of you who have been inside Men's Central Jail know, there's the smell of fire in a lot of areas. That is due to many reasons, and one is that the food coming is cold, very cold. And so in retaliation to those fires, some of which were conducted by way of radio battery, the radios were taken away from the people incarcerated rather than solving the issue of the cold food. So that's a little bit about some of the general conditions, a little bit more on medical services. Every time we go into Men's Central Jail, people come up to us with their medical concerns, saying that they are having problems accessing care. They're having slow to no responses to requests for care. Medical Services also has reported to us understaffing and underutilization of services overall, even though that they wish to see more patients per day, but are unable to. There's also difficulty managing spread of infectious disease, which we saw a lot during COVID and with hepatitis and with other types of diseases. We're also hearing a lot lately about reports of hunger and not receiving medical or special diets. When we get that information, we collect it, we get booking numbers and names, and we share it with the watch commander and work to try to make sure that the couple spot check people that we see get the treatment and get the service that they needed. Of course, in our random twice a month inspections, we are not able to get to everybody who's having that concern, but we're working to, when we are there, share what we do observe. Also on cleanliness, we see mold, we see ripped mattresses and mattresses that do not have the mandated plastic covering. We see a lack of hygiene products, dirty floors, cells in poor conditions, mold on walls. We've seen roaches, we've seen rats, we've seen bugs coming out of the sinks. We're also concerned about earthquake safety, as this is a building that is very old and a bit rickety and a massive disaster concern. both for those who are incarcerated and those who are working there. We're also observing phones that are not working, and we'll pick up the phone to try to see if they're able to call. We don't hear a dial tone. We don't hear it working. Calls are tried to make and they do not go through. We're also hearing reports that mail is being returned or delayed in being sent. It is not getting sent through properly, among many other things. So that's a bit of an overview of what we're seeing at Men's Central Jail. Does the commission have anything that they'd want to add to Men's Central Jail before I go on to CRDF?
I was just gonna thank you for that. That's a good overview. Is that I think when we raise a lot of the kind of conditions issues to the department, there's an acknowledgement of the decrepit horribleness of Men's Central Jail. And they're like, yeah, we need a new jail. Like, that's kind of the answer. Like, there's just this belief that there's nothing that can really be done in this moment because it's an old jail and we're told it needs to be replaced. That's another conversation, but I think just to highlight that we see a lot of these issues that aren't necessarily as much of a problem in other jails that the department oversees. So it seems more a culture problem at Men's Central Jail in terms of having any ownership of, fixing what's going on. And related to the complaint process and just sort of the tracking, I think that the department gets a lot of complaints because people keep submitting duplicate complaints because they don't get a response and there's no communication and people are in absolutely horrible, atrocious conditions, and they're desperate and there's no response and there's no fixing of what's going on. And so I think sometimes that's not being tracked in a way that shows what's really happening. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that, but anyway.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrell. So on to CRDF, Century Regional Detention Facility for Women in Linwood. Capacity last visit was approximately 1,266. General concerns that we are hearing and observing: air quality and temperature. We're hearing a lot about race-based retaliation concerns and deputy and detainee relations being poor and having much retaliation. There are also complaints of dirty water, again infested with bugs, similar to the Men's Central issue with little bugs crawling out of the water that we have observed. There's also issues with access to mail and reading material, with mail being returned or delayed. The education-based incarceration programs, there's issue with language access. Their programs are not all conducted in a bilingual manner, or if they have or say that they are bilingual in nature, that includes a deputy doing a simultaneous translation during an EBI program, which is not sufficient and is intimidating. Also the quantity and quality of programs has been brought up to us by those who are incarcerated. There's not as much of a focus on support for re-entry, and there is more of a focus on more punitive support or lack thereof. For medical, one thing that we observed last time we were at CRDF as well was that there was not a doctor there 24/7. When we were there were lots of concerns about needing medical support and not being able to go to the doctor or bring anyone over because there was not a doctor there. They had somebody call out and there was not somebody who was able to come in. There's also a big lice spread and concerns about general medical care, medical well-being. For nutrition, on the next slide, there's continued corrective action needed with concerns about expiration dates on food being well past their safety and the safety of drinking water, as I've noted. We also met somebody who had a peanut allergy who was receiving peanut butter in every meal despite her very clearly worded allergy and concerns about medical safety. We're also seeing special diets ignored, which includes gluten-free, halal, kosher, the high protein diet. A lot of these are just completely being skipped over. For medical services, wait time and access are rather limited. Another thing that is particularly interesting to us is that the left side elevator has been broken for 5+ months. When we were there in March, Mary says more than 5 months. When we were there in March, it was broken. When we were there 2 weeks ago, a couple weeks ago, it was still broken. And so we're a little bit unsure about what the process is for fixing said elevator, considering that not having the elevator working makes it so that everybody who is not able to walk down the stairs themselves in an emergency, that's highly concerning and dangerous. The other is if people are incarcerated on those higher levels and need to be escorted to court. There are stair chairs, but when we asked, they were not being used and people were being forced to walk very slowly instead down the stairs. And also, when that needs to happen and when meal service and things like that happen and an elevator is broken, that requires more staff and more escorts, and it locks down certain areas. So seems like fixing that elevator would be a lovely thing to do and solve a lot of the issues that we're seeing there. Anything else, commissioners, to add for our CRDF visits? CRDF?
Could you speak about the race-based retaliation that you witnessed or were reported in complaints?
I can speak a little bit about it. The commissioner who was writing about it is unfortunately not here today. But we are hearing a lot about. Mary, do you want to go for this? I don't feel comfortable adding.
No,
It was Eric. I'm sorry. This was from Commissioner Miller, and so I can speak a little bit about what we've written down. You can read about it in our reports more, but I don't feel comfortable giving the full explanation.
And we have another question.
This information that, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. This information that you're proposing, what's the time frame of these observations?
That's a good question. So this inspection is from April 23rd, and then also Commissioners Varall and Commissioner Regulato, Chair Regulato, were there less than a month ago.
And I think generally for all, I think this presentation generally is
all encompassing.
I would say the last year, but I've been on the commission since 2021 and spent a lot of time in the jail way before that too. It's pretty consistent, unfortunately. Yeah. These are very long-standing, well-known problems that we raise consistently all the time. And the response is, gee, thanks for bringing that to my attention. I will, it's very kind of, but these are very long-standing.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. That's what I was afraid of hearing. I really do applaud all of you commissioners who keep at this, keep visiting, keep documenting the situation, your observation, the complaints. And I guess this is a rhetorical question. How do you keep doing this without getting results? It's rhetorical, I know, but I think it's an important, important question. I'm sure you've raised it. I'm sure you're feeling it. Hopefully, if you made the Board of Supervisors aware of your frustrations and your persistence. So that's what I'm gleaning from. I appreciate that. I've known about the Sybil Brand Commission. How old is it? Is it 20 years?
No, it was founded in 1959.
In 1959. It was named after Sybil Brand.
It was founded by Sybil Brand.
Founded by Sybil Brand. And she's probably turning over in her grave, if I might, I might add. But so I guess yeah, I'm already frustrated on your behalf. I'm sure all of us commissioners here are. And so anything that we can do to support you, certainly, of course, we want to.
Thank you.
But I think it's important to note that this has been going, the same things. We know that Men's Central Jail, the conditions there, just the structure itself has been, it's pretty horrible. But still, even with that, I just can't believe that there can't be improvements made, So I don't want any of us to give up, but I think it's important to acknowledge the repetition and the repetition and the same old that all of you have been documenting and observing.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say, I appreciate that a lot. But I think and I know you said it's rhetorical, but I'll answer it anyways. I get to leave. I go like twice a month. This happens to our community all the time, and it's disgusting. And I guess I just have like a bottomless pit of rage, but like this happened, like people experience this and it's horrible. But I think I guess you just keep doing it because everybody else lives it. Somebody else is living it.
I brought this up at our last SBC meeting, but Commissioner Varela said something last time we were at Men's Central Jail that has really stuck with me. And there was somebody who was asking, or when we say, what are the conditions like? What has it been like for you in Men's Central Jail? Sometimes the response we hear is, well, it's jail. And then they start telling us about retaliation they've experienced. They start telling us about the mold, the roaches, the cockroaches, the rats, whatever inhumane conditions they're observing. That's not part of jail. That's not the punishment that people are supposed to be getting here. And Commissioner Varela said it beautifully, and you can say it again right now if you.
Well, it is also jail, and many people are innocent anyways, but if it's a punishment, your punishment is to be removed from your community. It's not to be subjected to horrible, inhumane, disgusting conditions. So that's what we told.
And I just wanted to note also that she remains a touchstone for many of us, but the late Gloria Molina, who passed away this year, took very personal responsibility for the county's role in achieving standards and upholding the law when it came to conditions of confinement. And I hear her voice echoing in the statements and the reporting being made today by the Sybil Brand Commission about the fact that, yes, there are particular dangers of people incarcerated being subjected to inhumane conditions on a recurring basis. But none of us is safe in a society when the state is rendered with impunity for repairing the conditions being documented and being reported to them. None of us is safe when those conditions that exist inside a jail can travel in our community and become tolerated and standard operating procedure. And I just want to note that while she is famous for her work to stop a jail, she took personally the responsibility to correct conditions inside jails too. And I just want to note that she is looking down on us and would be turning over in her grave to hear these conditions going unremedied, despite the numerous reports and documentation to the LASD and to other accountable people in the county.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to add with this idea of, well, it's jail. I want to I'm reminded of a quote by Dostoevsky, I think over 100 years ago, where he said, the way you judge a civilization is to look inside the jail.
Thank you for that.
See your hand up. I'd like to also make a statement. I
Mine's a statement, but if it's a question, I'll hold up. Mine's a statement.
Mine's a statement also.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just for the benefit of the members of the audience that are here, this did not happen overnight. This goes back to the former sheriff and to my fellow colleagues, commissioners of the COC. The Sybil Brand Commission, from a former commissioner, we prepared an 8-page report that we sent to the Board of Supervisors. And for the first time, I've been here 3 years, that our current sheriff, Sheriff Luna, and his command physically came and met with us at our meeting. And we went over every single detail. And for the members of the public, the captain and the commander are brand new in this position. The former commander is not here. So this didn't happen overnight. I want to reassure that. But definitely, we do have the attention of Sheriff Luna, and we also have the attention of the new command officers to address this. So we're not giving up, but at the same time, we're not turning a blind eye either. But we do have back and forth with the sheriff's department, and sometimes it is very painful, and sometimes it's pretty heated in our meetings, but we are bringing these issues up, and it's at a snail's pace, and it's not an excuse. But there is certain progress, but most important, Sheriff Luna does know what's going on, and we have a documented report that this commission sent to the Board of Supervisors. So it didn't happen overnight. This has been ongoing, but we're just frustrated. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Two things. The expectation that we go in there with the hope and the desire and the expectation that these things will be corrected, I think is historical. It's something that we have been wanting this to happen every time we go out and do an inspection. It's important to us because every single one of us here on this particular commission is there with the expectation that we want to see change, positive change. I believe that our words are being listened to, our reports are being listened to, and I want to go back to the Board of Supervisors meeting of, I believe, July 30th, when Sheriff Luna was actually there listening to what we were saying, what we're reporting, especially specific to the incident that occurred at Men's Central Jail. And his admission, at least I'll say it in that respect, because that's how I kind of took it, is that probably historically, we didn't get back timely reports of correction, and that he indicated that his desire is to do better. So I think that lends to the fact that as we do our work, our expectation is that we shall see corrective measures occurring, and that it gives me hope that what we say, what we see, what we expect is that we are being heard. And it's important that we have this opportunity now, since Sheriff Luna indicated that they could do better, that I think our expectation is that better will be done. So I'd just like to bring that in, that we, exactly as Commissioner Frutos indicated, that we do this with the expectation that better will be done. And we walk into every inspection that we are going to get better at this. When we say get better, we give more detailed reports that can be worked on, and reports that are specific enough so that we know that they are going to be corrected. So we do this with a high sense of hope and accountability as we do these inspections. My second point is that everything that we have seen or heard that occurred at CRDF and Men's Central Jail Um, a lot of focus on my behalf from me has been at sheriff stations and court facilities. And there are things that are rising to the level of concern at these facilities. Of course, at both these locations, we don't have people incarcerated overnight, so they come in at time, to make their court date, and they leave at the end of the day to get back to the facility that they came from. And then for the station population, it's short term. Usually, again, I've heard that in many cases, if not all, at this particular point, there is no one that stays overnight at these facilities, although they are prepared for overnight people. But in generally, they try to get them in and then out either through their court proceedings, or if they come in, they try to get them bailed out or whatever. But I'd like to bring to your all attention that there are some things that I think needs to really be looked at, and that is when a person is brought from one of the jail facilities to make their court date, they usually come with a box of food for them to be handed out during the course of the day that they are in court in a holding facility. Going to Vice Chair Broder's point, the expectation that some of these incarcerated have special meals that they are going to have to take with them is not usually with them, and it amounts to either a bologna sandwich or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. For someone who is diabetic and has a special need for diet, we have to make sure that if they're going to court, they got to take their special diet with them, because it's important. We don't want them to have a medical situation while they're in the facility. On the same manner, I'd like to also share that if a person has specific medical needs, when they need medication during the course of their day while they're incarcerated, we are told, are given that medical dose before they leave. The question is, what happens if they require doses, during the course of the day, and they are in the court holding all day long? Specifically, if you're taking someone incarcerated to court coming from, say, Bitch's facility, they're leaving quite early in the morning, and they're coming back quite late at night in that bus transportation. So we want to make sure that during the time that they are out of that main facility, that they are getting their medications. And these are things that we highlight. And it's really important that they do this, because we definitely don't want, again, to have a medical situation when they are at a station facility, or if they're at a court facility and have to get medical attention, and they have to be escorted to that medical facility, because then something else happens. There are 2 deputies, as we are told, that will escort an individual to a medical facility, which means there are 2 less staff members there to do the job, which could elevate the stress level of that facility, because their staff is impacted, and they're going to have to look for some other individual to help with that. So it's kind of this rolling snowball that could affect a person in their health abilities to be healthy, continue to be healthy while they're away from their main facility. But we certainly don't want to stress out the staff at that facility, because they have to escort them to a medical facility. So I hope that perhaps maybe as time goes on, we need to really take care of the fact that we could look at better strategies to how to handle that as we go forward.
Thank you. I just had a quick thing before I pass it out to Vice Commissioner Broder. I just wanted to answer the question that Commissioner Giggins asked around the time frame of specifically like the racially charged comments from deputies or custody folks. I know Commissioner Varall spoke to having seen this in 2021. I was at, again, North County on Saturday, and an incarcerated individual shared that he had one of the deputies call him a monkey inside of the facility, and that was just as of Saturday. So just to give context, since Commissioner Miller isn't here to speak on CRDF, this is definitely something that's real within inside our custody facilities. And I'll pass it back to you, Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, if we can complete the,
If we're going to complete the presentation. Sorry for that. And
No,
thank
no.
you for everybody. So over to where we are now and our follow-up and recommendations piece. As we've discussed, the conditions of confinement concerns are brought immediately to the watch commander. So every time we see something, we write it down in our notebooks. This is my little jail notebook, and I write down everything from every report in here. We have a list. I bring it to the watch commander at our end of inspection. Sometimes our inspections are an hour, and sometimes our inspections are 7 hours. Depends on what we're seeing and what we observe that day. We bring a list. We bring it to the watch commander. We see what they are able to do. We direct that to LASD facility command staff. We share it in the reports afterwards. We share via email. We follow up as much as possible. We have COC representation at our monthly meetings. Thank you, COC. We have OIG representation at our monthly meetings as well. We give reports and recommendations to the Board of Supervisors, and we provide reports to the public in our monthly public reports. So that's how we conduct follow-up and recommendations. We do not have the authority as the Sybil Brand Commission to make these changes or enact these changes. The authority that we do have is to conduct inspections and share the results and recommendations brought forth from those inspections. I wish that I could physically go into CRDF and make that elevator work, but unfortunately we do not have that ability. And so while we are told make the change, fix the elevator, I'm not the maintenance person who can go out and do that. So I'm hoping, and we are all hopeful as the Sybil Brand Commission, that these reports lead to the change. But again, 6+ months later, an elevator still doesn't work, and that's kind of the lower end of our concerns that we're raising here. For our next steps right now, we received a report back on the conditions at Men's Central Jail, reaffirming the county's commitment to care and responding to those in our care. That was from LASD in response to the Board of Supervisors presentation and board motion about what we observed at Men's Central Jail with the situation that we've discussed already. The letter that we are sending out, I believe today, back to the Board of Supervisors, talking through that report, demonstrates how that report back from LASD failed to cover any of the topics that the Board of Supervisors was requesting that the Sheriff's Department cover. We were really, really hoping that in the report back, we would see policies, we would see information, we would see tangible solutions to the problems and concerns that we are bringing up. And it's really quite beyond disappointing to continue to see the lack of response in the report back that we receive. So we are continuing to advocate and to support as much as we can through our inspections and through our reports. But again, this is the purpose of the Sybil Brand Commission, to conduct inspections, to give reports, and to provide recommendations moving forward. So that is what we have. Anything else? Oh, yes. One of the recommendations we are moving forward with right now and trying to push that we brought up at our last few meetings is we are hoping to create a telephone line in order to receive conditions of confinement information from those incarcerated and share reports to the public. We are currently studying the feasibility of that and working to try to implement something like that because, as we've mentioned, with our inspections, we're only able to go in twice a month, every 30 days, and these are indeed spot checks. And so we do not have the ability to see what's going on at all times. But if people who are inside are able to report on the conditions of confinement for themselves to a recorded number or recorded line, then we can have that information and be able to share it out to the public and have a record of what is being said from those who are experiencing it themselves. So that's one of our big goals right now, is to try to figure out how to make that happen and how we can really amplify the voices of those who are inside, who are giving us a lot of great information when we're conducting inspections, but outside of that time, there's gaps that we cannot cover. So that is our overview on conditions of confinement for the Sybil Brand Commission. We are continuing to do inspections every month. We have monthly meetings, and we'd love to see more of the public there. Thank you.
Okay, we have another piece to this particular agenda item, and that is the LASD report, second quarter report, and we have the sheriffs here to report on that. They'll cover that. And then after that, we'll take public comment.
Captain Walker. Just speaking briefly about the 2024 second quarter conditions of confinement report. Let's see. The major sections that are covered in this report are the specific inmate grievances, the town halls and the top issues addressed, communicable diseases, preventative services and treatment, pregnancies and births, and in-custody deaths. The report starts out, again, just mentioning some of the efforts that are being undertaken to try to reduce the jail population. It mentions the pre-arraignment release protocols that have already previously been discussed and kind of outlined. It also mentions some of the efforts that we have kind of taken to improve our numbers of personnel who have already been sentenced to confinement in CDCR facilities to make those movements happen a little bit more efficiently. We've improved over our first quarter in that regard. We continue to communicate and collaborate with some of the state hospitals and some of the other institutions to help with the transition into those places as well. As far as grievances go, in that quarter, our total number of grievances was about 8,500. And that's broken down by facility and also by month, but that's the overall quarter. And the grievances as they pertain to processing delays, overcrowding, and condition, it's about 117 specifically towards that area as they relate to those topics. Some of the statistics will look a little bit different than they did from that first quarter as we rolled out our custody inmate grievance new application in June of 2023, and some of those things were still being caught up as they were transitioning from one database to the next. Town hall meetings, each facility has their set group of town halls that they do. For Twin Towers Correctional Facility in that quarter, they conducted 248 town hall meetings. Men's Central Jail conducted 108. Century Regional Detention Facility conducted 89. PDC North conducted 214. I'm sorry, NCCF, North County Correctional Facility did 214. Pitches Detention Center North conducted 93. Pitches Detention Center South conducted 70. There were none conducted at Pitches Detention Center East, which is a facility that's only used for a very limited group of program incarcerated persons. And the Inmate Reception Center, as it's an intake center, not a typical housing center, they also didn't have town hall meetings. So there was a total of 822 town halls conducted in all of the applicable facilities over that quarter. So in the discussions with the town hall meetings with the populations that are there, the top 3 topics that were pretty consistent month by month were facility conditions and / sanitation, telephones, and lastly, you'll typically see either bedding, clothing, inmate programs, things of that nature. But the top 5 are pretty consistent month by month, with exercise and rec coming in place some areas, and also inmate programming. As far as the communicable diseases are mentioned, it gives kind of a breakdown of certain communicable diseases by facility, and however, the 3 facilities that are fully open at Pitcher Detention Center and the one that is primarily used for programming are all covered in one group for PDC. And it gives the breakdown for each of the potential diseases and also the numbers in those areas. This information is obtained through medical personnel. CHS, they're the keepers of those records. For preventative services and treatments, this is talking about flu shots and also COVID vaccinations. Those numbers are broken down again, facility by facility, except for Pitcher Detention Center is all lumped together. And it's given just the amount of numbers of people who've accepted those treatments for preventative measure during that time period for the quarter. Then as far as for the incarcerated people who are pregnant, it's a breakdown month by month. Of course, the report numbers fluctuate based on the population that moves in and out, and also as those pregnancies progress to their outcomes. And then they break down the outcomes month by month as well. Typically, those will all be limited to Century Regional Detention Facility where we house those inmates. Lastly, under this report, it mentions the in-custody deaths that appeared over the quarter. That occurred over that quarter, which were 8 in-custody deaths over the quarter. Of those 8, 7 were pre-sentenced, 1 was sentenced. And just in looking at the manner, it lists 5 that are pending. 2 were natural and 1 was accidental. And that's just like the general overview of the second quarter 2024 conditions of confinement report. This report, as well as some of the other things that I discussed earlier, can all be found on our department's website through the internet for public viewing. Any questions?
Let me make one last comment. It was brought to my attention that we didn't hit the SBC special report or report on education-based incarceration, EBI. We had a survey that we did probably very quickly when I came on board, and we were out to all the facilities talking about the desire, the need, the type of education-based incarceration. And even today, we still hear that there are requests for more education opportunities out there. Maybe there's someone here that can speak a little bit more about it. But the thing is that it's something that's very high on the expectation, or the request, I should say, from the people who are incarcerated. It's something that I think is it's important to us, so that when they are released from the time that they are there, we want them prepared to fulfill, aspects of their lives that probably they didn't have. And this education opportunity, I think, is really important for them. So we keep looking at that, we keep asking questions about it, and we keep getting responses from the incarcerated that this is important to them also. I probably, perhaps Commissioner Miller, Burrell, you may have other, additional insights, But I don't want to go and ignore the fact that this is something that we have to continue to look at and bring more in. I think during COVID, we found out that there was a lot of this stuff that was kicked back, because of the infection. So hopefully there is that emphasis that we need to bring these instructors back to the site, the opportunities for them for the incarcerated to be able to have the opportunity to get trained, get educated so that they have the opportunity to fulfill better aspects of their lives, when they leave.
And I was just going to highlight with that, I would invite everyone to read it if you haven't. Former Chair Grills was really instrumental in guiding us through that process. But it sort of highlights what's in the department's report and what we hear and what was told to us in the survey. It's really consistent that people want programming. People want to spend the time in a constructive way, but they're not getting the opportunities. And so I think that was the biggest thing that came out of our report. It wasn't something that people were offered. It was something that they wanted and they were asking for it. But it wasn't available to them. They didn't know how to sign up. They had signed up and they aren't getting access to it. So that was what the survey showed. And it looks like that's kind of what you're still hearing in the town hall meetings and what we certainly hear in our inspections. Can I ask a question about this or do we?
Yeah, are we ready to go to public comment?
Oh, no, I was going to ask about the report on.
Yeah, I was going to take the questions from us, so I would say, yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Ask the
okay.
question.
This is really, this sort of makes me feel good that we're hearing the same things in the town hall meeting that in our inspections that you all hear in the town hall meetings. And maybe, I don't know, I think you're probably just reporting the report. So I don't know if you're the right person to answer, but what are you doing about these?
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't be the person most knowledgeable about that. Unfortunately, I kind of limited my preparation to what the request was that was sent.
No,
So that's a little bit outside of the scope of what I was prepared to speak about today. But I can just tell you that we also find value in that, of course. Programming and any opportunity to do something a little bit more constructive, we find the value in that as well. So we do look for those opportunities. Here recently, we've done a little bit of additional work specifically with some of our justice-involved veterans to try to get more resources there and connect them to some of the services that they'll receive outside. So there's kind of that continuation of care. So we're looking to do that in as many places as possible. And I know this is something that's been brought up frequently, but for example, in some of our facilities, there's very limited space. So we're looking for space to hold those classes and provide those opportunities. So as we kind of move forward with some of those challenges, and maybe we can get a little bit of improved infrastructure, that may help alleviate some of those concerns. Because oftentimes we're competing for space to do those things with the number of different classifications that we have to make sure that everybody's in a safe space and they can do it safely. We need those opportunities.
One thing I was going to say on that, I think what Chairperson Regalado was sharing is just even getting the rebound from what EBI looked like before the pandemic. And I don't know, is that problem just restarting those contracts or relationships with the people who were inside before? Because we got the same spaces that we had before the pandemic that we have now. And I know even at North also, they had like these beautiful vocational rooms and painted marine, huge, like classrooms the size of this room, frankly. But there was some programming, but none of it has been, and the staff shared, none of it has been rebounded to pre-pandemic.
Right. Yeah. It's still being used in some capacity. I was there maybe 2 weeks ago now, and there was a class occurring in that particular space that I'm talking about where you can see the landscaping up there. Yeah, but it has not returned. That is true. And some of it has been reestablished in some of those contracts. Some of it has been the interest of those outside vendors. But over time, we hope to rebuild those spaces. But I can tell you one thing that has changed even from the pandemic to now is some of the numbers for some of the specific classifications. So although the space may be the same, it may be a little bit less flexible because there's very specific classifications that could be with other classifications. And as our mentally ill population has increased, that presents some additional challenges for those programming opportunities.
And specifically, are you also citing how a lot of folks with lower level sentences were released during the pandemic, and so y'all are left with folks who have higher classifications.
Correct.
So
And-
when it, okay,
And of those, then we have to separate them by those security levels and also, depending on their status, depending on their mental acuity, it creates some additional challenges because there's so many different classifications that may not necessarily be able to partake in those programs at the same time.
right. So in addition to space, we're hearing vendor contracts and interest, and then less folks of lower levels.
Correct.
Classifications. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've getting into public comment now, so
Yeah, I just want to ask about the communicable disease results, because some of those numbers raise particular concern given what we're hearing about conditions in the jails and some of the overcrowding in some units in particular. But I just wanted to ask you if you have any additional remarks or observations about some of the communicable disease numbers, because when you look at the number of syphilis tests positive and some of the HIV tests positive, that raises, I guess, a number of worries. And I just wanted to see if there's any discussion in the department about the reported numbers here.
Unfortunately, I wouldn't be the best resource. These are numbers and statistics that we get from the medical side of the house, but the data that was provided to us doesn't necessarily mean that these are things that occurred in custody, but now that they're there, they make efforts to try to treat them and provide outreach. But I couldn't give a further statement about what strategy that they're applying to try to address that.
Have you participated in any of the town hall meetings that are outlined and and enumerated in the previous graph also? I just wanted to ask your experience
Yes.
about the town halls and whether there's any discussion about the prevention of communicable diseases, or if that is an item that is touched on.
In the town halls I've participated in, the only time that I've had anyone mention anything, it's been specifically about our positive care clinic that we had specifically that kind of tailored to our LGBTQ population at Men's Central Jail. And they just talked about, gaining access to that, how that was beneficial to them. But I never had anybody address any concern saying that, I guess, that they needed treatment or needed services that they weren't being provided.
While I'm speaking here as a member of the public, I just want to flag that for the department that this may be an issue that we will raise at our next COC meeting coming up in October. And if that might be a discussion item that the department is prepared to address there, I think this raises questions for us about the responsiveness to the communicable disease numbers being cited here, because it is worrisome and it is also a warning.
Right. And I completely understand, but just to highlight, this will be something that will be our correctional health services that will be handling those strategies and how to best address that.
Thank you.
yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
Can I ask regarding the top issues derived from town hall meetings? I know there's a note here that you don't have data tracking capability to illustrate real-time status, but can you give us kind of an overview of how these issues are taken in by LASD when they're presented by the public at town halls? Are these issues sort of tracked and followed up with the public? Is there sort of an internal tracking mechanism when these issues are reported? Just to get a sense of how the issues are taken in and how they're then responded to.
Right. So just for clarity, these are not public town halls. These are town halls with the incarcerated populations.
Right. Sorry, I meant with the incarcerated.
Oh, okay. Just
Sorry.
being clear. Okay, so when we receive those in, what there is there's a town hall report. And for each facility, what they do is they'll do a town hall report. Typically, there's someone in their operations staff that will track those and log them, and then it goes into a custody-wide system. And from there, those reports are generated and pushed out to the concerned command staff for those facilities so they can follow up on those particular issues depending on what they will be.
Got it. And so is there ever an audit to see what the list of issues are, if the issues have been addressed or if there are any pending issues? that are still remaining, that are unaddressed based on things that come up at the town hall meetings?
Well, yes and no. So the problem is, as it's been cited here, is a lot of the concerns that are brought up in town halls are ongoing. So they're not necessarily, so if there's a concern with the facility conditions, there can be efforts that are being made in those moments to try to address those things, but then there'll be other things that will occur. So a lot of these are issues that we'll see consistently month over month. So it doesn't necessarily fall off, but when there's specific ones, like let's say if there's a specific concern mentioned by someone that can be addressed, those things will be followed up on, but that's typically at a unit level.
Right. I guess then if there are more systemic issues or things that can't be addressed because they're not an isolated issue, how does the department then record or deal with those issues?
You're saying something that's come up in a town hall and
So let's say it's
like,
not an isolated incident. It's not, there's a specific meal issue with a specific individual not getting their dietary needs, but it's a more systemic issue that's happening because you mentioned that some of these things are systemic and they're not isolated incidents. How does the department then handle those systemic issues? Because I imagine they're harder to address, but just as important as the isolated incidents.
right. So oftentimes, what we'll do is we'll generate what's called a corrective action plan. We'll try to outline whatever that concern is, the systemic issue on that corrective action plan, and try to outline measures that we think will address that specific challenge. And then we'll follow up at the end kind of as an audit of that corrective action and see if it actually had the desired effect on whatever that, I guess, the challenge was that we were experiencing.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
What is the frequency of the town halls? Can you speak to that?
No, it varies.
Okay.
But if I'm remembering right, I want to say everyone has a town hall schedule where it's almost randomized so that every area will be at least addressed monthly. I think every housing area is addressed monthly. So the frequency will kind of vary by facility because there's more housing areas for each one, if that makes sense.
So who should we contact? I think it would be great as commissioners if we could attend some of these.
Mm-hmm.
So should we talk to each individual captain, or what would be the best way to kind of get that time
Right.
frame
You
figured
can
out?
try to start there, but oftentimes it's not scheduled like this meeting per se. It'll be on calendar for today, but it may be at 8 a.m. It may be at 12 a.m. But you can attempt to coordinate that through the operations staff to see if that could be set up.
Okay.
But oftentimes that's done by line personnel.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get the public comment. Because of the essence and because of timing, we're going to bring the questions to 1 minute.
First public comment we have is from John Davis.
Once again, thank you. I have, I'm just kind of, first thing, thanks for the work that you do, and to the Sheriff Department, thanks for the work that you guys do. I just have a question. I was kind of mind-boggling about the elevators. Elevator's been down for 5 months. You went back and it was still down. As an inspector, did you even ask the department, was a work order put in? So that's a question for you guys. And then second question, I'm just curious, and I have to write this down. Do the doctors and nurses that work in the jail work for the sheriff departments? Are they under Department of Mental and Public Health? And if they are, then why are they not here answering those medical questions that for like diseases and things, or those that's incarcerated not being checked? So that's a question for you guys to wonder if the medical team is hired by from Department of Mental Health and Public Health, why they're not here. That's a question for the commission as well. And then one of the questions was on the inspection. You say you go 2 per month, and you didn't do 2 per month. So I want to know when was the last time you did it and how many? Was it 2, 1?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next public comment is from Wanda Solomon. Commissioners, you have a handout related to this public comment.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Wanda Solomon, and I represent and advocate for single families. First of all, I'd like to say that I am a mental health Medi-Cal peer specialist. I am trained, I have a certificate, and I'm continuing to become certified. And I'd like the board to support me in that because this is an issue of mental health. It really boils down to those people incarcerated versus us. And I'd like to find out how I can participate, become part of a liaison, if you will, or become hired. I could start volunteering. Any way that I can get a foot in, if I could start as a typist, if I could start as an assistant, let me know. If you want to make a note of my email or phone number, you can speak with me afterwards. But I am just appalled and looking forward to making a difference.
Thank you.
And hopefully you all will reach out to me.
Next
I want to
public
give this
comment.
gentleman my card as well.
Next public comment
Thank
is
you.
from Melissa Camacho. Melissa?
Hi, Melissa Camacho, ACLU SoCal. If you want public participation, you need to give more than 1 minute for public comment. But very quickly, some issues with the LASD report that I encourage the COC to look into. 7 grievances, conditions of confinement from Twin Towers over 3 months is laughable. It's incorrect. 7 a day is probably low, so there's something significantly wrong with the search terms they're using to pull for this. For the in-custody death, LASD continues not to report the facility of incident. So anytime the death takes place in a hospital, you're not aware of what incident or what location it's coming from. The public isn't aware of which facilities are the most impacted. And there's just an issue with the qualitative report back. There's some mention by Captain Walker of sometimes corrective action plans are put into place. Both bodies should consider demanding caps for particular incidents and getting report backs on caps for things like the porn viewing in 1750 to find out what's actually being done. I have more, but we'll let the next person go. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment is from Berkeley Donovan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Berkeley Donovan. I'm the Jails Conditions Advocate at ACLU SoCal. I also just want to comment on the general conditions that both SBC raised, but also that folks who are incarcerated raised in their own town halls is nothing new to anything I've seen or that ACLU has observed or heard as well. Specifically wanting to note, I appreciate bringing up, the plumbing issues, and I'd like to connect that to the humidity. When showers are left on constantly, it leaves, the area is incredibly humid. I appreciate you referencing a limited response to grievances or no grievance forms available at all. I'd also like to connect that to retaliation concerns as folks who do out of desperation file multiple grievances on their own behalf are then, retaliated on for that. And then my last comment would be there are plenty of folks on the 2nd and 3rd floors of CRDF who are mobility impaired, and the elevators drastically limit their ability to get to court and to their own medical appointments. And I also would like to echo the request and concern that these things aren't being quality referenced or responded to with quality from LAC.
Next public comment is from Lupe Hervias. Lupe?
Just from hearing out all the comments, lack of response to provide the help that they need or the assistance that these people need, the people in jail. Over and over, I hear things, and I understand that if these people would really matter, the people that are incarcerated, there would be more done, and it's not. It's not being addressed. The issues are not being addressed. They're provided a place to live with roaches and rats, food not being clean, showers not working or being too cold, them not getting blankets, treating them inhumane. However, these are the people that get released on the streets. What is the outcome? What are we going to get back from them? They're going to end up going back.
Thank you. Next public comment is online. We have Audit LA. Audit LA, you've been unmuted.
I'm here to let the commission know that they are being maybe a non-complicit or not realizing that they're being used by Scientology in their fair gaming attack against First Amendment protesters because they
Is
are.
this public comment on this agenda item related to
Yes, it's about how
conditions
in
of
the jail,
confinement?
right. You're taking away my time. Yes.
Is this related to conditions of confinement?
Yes, if you would give me back my time, I'm allowed to make comparisons. I'm allowed to introduce it, okay? Yes. Now, you took away my time. I want my time back.
If this item is related to conditions of confinement, we'll
It
start
is,
there.
ma'am, if you'd let me get to it. I was setting it up, okay? I am going to get there. Give me my time back, please.
Go ahead and start your public comment, ma'am.
Okay. Now, these people, okay, are being arrested and put into your jails, and they're not being treated properly. One of the people, never arrested for anything, only arrested and put in your jail because of a political protest against Scientology. And he has had two, he's a senior, almost a senior, has medical conditions, was not treated for his medical conditions properly, was not cared for or given, blankets or anything. And totally mistreated. This is not somebody who's out there committing crimes. This is somebody exercising their First Amendment right to protest against crimes against children. Okay, and you guys are like housing these. You're just treating anyone like they're the scum of the earth. And injuring people like he was further injured by the treatment in your people are further injured in your jails, harmed, and it's disgusting.
Thank you. Next public comment is from Monam. Monam, you've been unmuted.
First, can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I too would like to talk about the jail system, and Scientology is behind some front groups such as Narconon and Crimeon, which are part of the jail system. And I want to ring the alarm bell. You have, I want you to go away from this with one resounding thought, not on my watch, in the sense today. These horrible atrocities that Narconon and Crimeon are a part of end up resulting in juveniles and adults being locked up in facilities due to crimes that they've committed. Crimes such as that they've had committed against them, such as physical, mental, sexual abuse, neglect, torture, trafficking, and abandonment. And they all cause lasting physical and mental disabilities that directly cause to the
Thank you.
institutionalization.
Thank you. We have no further public comments on this item.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next agenda item. And that's a presentation on LASD inmate grievance applications. Go ahead.
All right, so for the inmate grievance application, the inmate grievance application is titled the Custody Inmate Grievance Application, or CIGA is what we call it for short. CIGA was put in place in June of 2023 as an improvement over our previous system that was done through CARTS, which was our Custody Automated Reporting Tracking System. So some of the challenges we had with CARTS was it was a very old, outdated system. It didn't provide some of the reporting and the statistics and tracking that we needed to better come into compliance with our various settlement agreements. So CIGA was an advancement over that. Some of the benefits are, I'll lay them out. It improved efficiency because it's web-based instead of being designed based on an old platform. The previous platform was InfoPath. It's improved performance. It's a little bit quicker also because it's web-based instead of dependent on an application, which at times would crash or go down. It provides some user training interfaces built into the programs and also has some alerts. So there's some specific compliance measures that we have to be in compliance with through ROSIS or DOJ or even some of our ADA concerns. And this will flag some of those grievances as it comes in to make sure that we highlight that, hey, these are some of the specific provisions that you have to make sure you're accounting for and you're watching for when you review these specific grievances. It provided a little bit better accountability to where a particular grievance wouldn't just be assigned to a facility. It could be assigned to a subunit within a facility. As many of you know, we'll have, for example, Men's Central Jail. But within Men's Central Jail, you may have EBI programs working inside or some of the other programs to where instead of it being assigned to the facility, it'll be assigned to that specific subunit that'll be actually performing the review of that grievance because it pertains to some of the work that they do. So that improved a little bit the accountability and also the efficiency of the workflow to get some of those matters addressed a little bit quicker. And it also added a unique identifier number. Previously, in our CART system, we were using the general custody reference numbers, which can be different from facility to facility because there's an individual number that's built into that reference number that is assigned to that facility. Well, since this has a unique identifier, it's across all the facilities, all the subunits. So no matter where the complaint was generated, it can be easily forwarded or it can be a combined effort from different facilities and we don't have to worry about duplicating the numbers or having any issues with the tracking or the statistical purposes later. So it was specifically designed to address our compliance requirements stemming from the three major lawsuits, like I mentioned, ROSIS, Johnson, and our DOJ provisions. It does have several features that are built into it to aid in reporting. So as we grow this new application and get more acclimated to using it, as there is requests that are made, be it from some of our other justice partners or even other entities within the sheriff's department, as they identify information that they need from this program, it makes it a lot easier to build out those reports to where they're automatically generated and send it out to those units to track those needs. Let's see. There's enhanced monthly reporting. Monthly reports to department executives are more robust, providing detailed insights to identify some of the bottlenecks. It'll show where that workflow in the grievance process sometimes is kind of being stuck, so we can try to address those, maybe either reallocate resources to that particular area to make sure these things are addressed more efficiently, or even disperse some of those duties to other areas to make sure they're done. And that's kind of the general overview of the application that we use for inmate grievances in custody.
Thank you. Any questions from them around the table? Commissioner Burrell?
Hi, thank you. Just quick, is there any component of this that makes it more, I don't know, accessible for the people to submit complaints or for them to get information back about them? Or is this all on kind of the department's end of how you're doing it?
Well, I'll say no for the first part, yes for the second part.
Okay.
So the reason I say no for the first part, what will really enhance that, and one of the things that we're working on kind of outside of this is the tablet solution. When we have that tablet solution, it makes things immediate. It goes right into the system. It'll go, and that'll be phenomenal. Once we can get to that place, it's going to help us tremendously in a lot of areas. So, because some of that immediate feedback will help a lot. However, it does help with the response because it's a little bit more efficient It has built-in reminders in here, and it kind of highlights some of the needs because there are some very stringent compliance measures that kind of come into play when you're not making those proper notifications of the disposition of complaints. So there are some warnings that are built into this that'll help with that. There's also a cue that you can watch to see where your tasks are, and it allows supervision to also look and see where these tasks are and where there should be. So it can help with the response in that regard. It doesn't necessarily help with the intake. I think that solution will be what we'll need.
Yeah, tablets would be
Phenomenal.
phenomenal on many levels of the issues we've been raising. But so even though there's the tracking or like kind of the supervision, that's all on the department side. So the person who filed it has no clue what's going on at all until they get some physical piece of paper back, right?
Correct. Until either someone from the department reaches out to them or they get the formalized response.
I'm going to ask a question myself, and this, I don't know, this just popped into my head. We're talking about grievance for inmates. Is there something similar that maybe an inmate family member could do under this grievance item, or is that a completely different aspect of how a person or family member could speak on behalf of their incarcerated individual?
Right. If they have a concern with some of the conditions of what their family member that's in custody, then there's different processes where it'll be the same system that'll be used, but those concerns may come in via telephone, they may come in through email. Some of our justice partners, they'll get the concerns and they'll forward us through the third-party complaint procedure. So we'll get a lot of complaints from the ACLU that'll forward to us. We'll get them from the OIG that they'll forward to us. So a lot of times that's what the forward-facing community members will meet. Either the website, some of the justice partners, or sometimes they'll just call and we'll address it from there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
This is the curse of having long nails. Thank you for your presentation. I am process driven, right? Ways to seek solutions to the complaint form process as well as the grievance form process here. So I know that our previous presentation, someone mentioned that there was an issue with grievance forms not being followed up on, also not being made available to those individuals who are incarcerated. My question is because we have several oversight entities here in LA, does any of our entities monitor the grievance forms to make sure that whatever is being looked into is being done fairly and thoroughly, and if issues that are being raised are also addressed?
So if I'm understanding your question, are you speaking about the availability of the actual physical forms or the follow-up to the concerns that were brought forward?
Yes, the follow-up also, like the availability. I know the OIG might, if they receive it, they might send it back over. But what happens, as far as the outcomes, is there any type of oversight on what is being done internally?
Yes, there is. There's a division level grievance team that helps monitor these. There's the actual command staff that also monitors, and the OIG also has reports, and they are also involved sometimes, specifically if they are the ones that brought the third-party grievance forward. A lot of times they'll follow up on what that status was.
So they get normal outcome updates?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I see no other indication that there's questions from around the table. Oh,
Was there any explanation for why the grievance forms were found in the trash? I just want to put that out there because we had reports of grievance forms being found in trash at a detention facility. And has any follow-up been made about that concern or that complaint?
Again, I don't have any details about that specific incident, so I wouldn't be the best one to speak to that. I'd have to know where that facility or which facility that occurred to try to get some input on that.
a follow-up question. So does the OIG, do they have access to the program that you'll use? Like when the grievance forms come in, they get to see what is being received? Do they have access to whatever database?
I'm not sure to what, I know that they have some access. I'm not sure to what degree they have access to all of that information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions from around the table, we'll go ahead and take public comment. 1 minute, please.
We have one public comment on this item. Online, Audit LA, you're being unmuted if you have a public comment on this agenda item.
Yes, hi. I would like to ask about the grievance process for the people who are, that I'm referring to that are almost like political prisoners because they're being abused by a system that doesn't even charge them, or sometimes they're starting to charge them, but it's like all bogus stuff. Where, even though they're not in the system anymore, can they still complain about what is going on with them? Can we, as people who are watching this, complain grievances? Because this is our community and there's lawfare going on here. And I don't know that you're complicit in the sense that you know what's going on. You're just running the jail. You don't realize the dynamics of what's going on, but it's going on and people want it to be brought to higher level attention because what LAPD is doing is arresting these people on a Friday, knowing the case is going to be dropped, but knowing they're going to spend a weekend, especially maybe a holiday weekend, they really go for that, and just to get that time in jail.
Thank you.
How do we?
Thank you. We have one public comment in person, Wanda Solomon.
Yes, basically, as everyone has commented about the grievance process, I'm concerned also with the mailing process that goes with it as well. I know my son is going through the system. I don't even know if he ever got the form. They just say, oh, you can go pick it up over there. And he may not know where the form is. He may need assistance. His mental health capacity, he may need assistance with that in filling it out. And I'm concerned also about the probation officers and how they conduct themselves, or whoever assists the people that are incarcerated don't get any kind of assistance if they are not well educated enough to fill it out, to spell what they want to say, how they want to say it, and things like that. What is the turnaround of this? What is a formalized response? I mean, I need to know a little bit more about what that is and how that looks. So yes, what is the turnaround point on that?
Thank you. No further public comments on this item.
Okay, thank you. That'll bring us to our next agenda item, and it's a board motion on menstrual products. Captain Walker?
That'll be Commander Montoya.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. In response to AB 732, the department revised their division policy as well as a unit order. These are actually two policies. They're separate. One of them is our department policy, which basically applies to all of our custody division. And with that, we added specific language that incorporates that of 732. So we revised our division manual, or our department policy, under personal care items and supplies for inmates, adding the phrase, each menstruating inmate shall have ready access to sanitary napkins, panty liners, and tampons. In addition to that, we also updated our unit order for Century Regional Detention Facility, which is specific to that facility. With that, we incorporated language into that unit order that stated, each menstruating inmate housed at CRDF shall be provided the sanitary napkins, panty liners, and tampons. All feminine hygiene products shall be readily available in a common space within each module or pod setting. After revising the policies, we ensured that all of our staff were briefed. All division for the custody division manual update for the personal care items and supplies for inmates. And then we did specific briefings for CRDF personnel so that they were aware of the changes of their unit, their specific unit order. In addition to that, the CRDF operations staff walked all the floors to ensure that this was in place. Prior to the policy revisions, which occurred probably in April and March of 2024, CRDF was already making feminine hygiene products readily accessible to our incarcerated population. However, after walking the floors and sending out these briefings, it was found that the products were accessible for our mental health population. However, they were not readily accessible to our general population. And it appeared that those items in our general population were being managed by some of our inmate workers. So we made strides to correct that and now have them readily available on the different levels or on the different tiers of the floors. This way that would alleviate any issues. There wouldn't be regulation of products and that they're easily accessible for everybody. CRDF has also instructed supervisors as they do their floor walks to ensure that they're also checking for these products so that they're available on the floor so that there's a proper supply as needed. But we encourage any commissioners as you do your walks, if you notice that we are short supply on the floors, please notify the deputies and we'll get those replenished. But for the most part, they are readily accessible and we're continuing our briefings with all of our staff so that they continue on this process.
Okay. Questions, comments? Yes.
Thank you so much, Commander Montoya, for coming and speaking to us on this. I wanted to, and I would pass it to Vice Chair to speak on for folks who have been at inspections where it was missing, and I appreciate the change and attention to it. One thing I wanted to name was we went to Van Nuys Courthouse, and the only thing that was available was pads, panty liners, and tampons weren't. And I'm curious if what you have witnessed at your other workstation visits, but I just wanted to uplift that to you. We have it in our reports as well. But in terms of having that same amount of diligence that was applied to CRDF in those facilities, because of course there are folks, menstruating individuals as well, and also an appreciation for that gender expansive language generally in the policy and in your report specifically. Thank you.
I will say that when I do my station inspections, they have all had one form or another of product. I have not seen them have all three products there available. So I think that will probably need to be looked at so that all three of them are there available for them.
So we'll follow up. We'll reach out to our court services and station jails to follow up with that.
Thank you. I just wanted to say one other thing for the record. Of course, having all three types is very important because there's not different, and it's not like greedy, it's really necessary because there aren't different, it's not like Tampax galore or something like that. There are people who have different flows, obviously, and so you very often need more than one more than one menstruation product to be able to accommodate your needs, especially when you're at court and you want to be at your best. So I just wanted to have that on record as well.
Thank you. Vice Chair Roeder.
Thank you. I'm looking at my notes from previous inspections at CRDF, and I see there was a note that there was somebody we spoke with who was deprived pads as a form of retaliation for over a week. There was somebody else who mentions that they were constantly out of hygiene packs. I know that those, we heard from Assistant Sheriff Tokar at our last meeting that many of those have been resolved since this inspection happened. What we saw is what you mentioned, that mental health areas seem to have a lot more access to menstruation products and general population did not. So we spoke to one person in particular who said that they had their period and had no pad for the rest of the day. And they were given out pads just by trustees in that case. So what you're saying is great that there's been so much change here. The gender responsiveness team I know has done a lot of work on this, and there's obviously still concerns about making sure that there is access. What we'd raised at previous meetings was that it seems like there was not an issue of the amount of sanitation products in general that existed. It was the distribution and making sure that they were accessible without being able to ask. One of my concerns here is that if they are accessible in a common area, certain people, depending on their what it's called, not status, their classification, thank you. Depending on their classification, may not be able to go out and get them. And so it still is going to be dependent on somebody else to be able to bring them to them. And so making sure that there is not retaliation happening based in that way, as we've heard.
Sorry, the last thing for the record also is for 20 years at least, at many of our facilities, folks only get one roll of toilet paper for a week that's given out on Thursdays. If as a punishment, folks are not receiving their menstrual products, your next step is to use toilet paper, and this becomes a very big hygiene issue within our facilities because of that. So that's the other thing I would love to have reflected in the minutes.
There was there was a report that's expected 60 days after the board motion. Do we have any status on that? Because I haven't seen one yet, so I'm wondering if it's already been completed or we still are expecting it.
I don't have an update on that. I will have to check with our executive staff to see where we're at with that. But I believe there was a collaboration with CRDF as well as with our chiefs. So I'm not sure exactly where we're at with that process.
And if I can, I want to make sure that SBC is also part of the distribution of this report. It seems like we had to kind of search for some of the other reports that were expected, that we were obligated to or asked to report on. So if we can make sure that it does get to to SBC, the Sybil Brand Commission.
I will follow up with that.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, can we get public comment, please? 1 minute.
We have one public comment online from Audit LA. Audit LA, you're being unmuted for public comment on this agenda item.
I want to thank Winter for your commentary. Thank you. I am appalled, disgusted, and dismayed that any person who has a menstrual cycle cannot just easily access whatever product they need just because they're incarcerated. That doesn't mean they're guilty or what, even if they are guilty, it doesn't matter. It's human beings. How dare you punish people with this, with withholding a tampon are you serious? This is really happening? Like, it's really going on. Like, I had no clue. I am livid. How dare you? And as a female deputy, I want to know, is it male deputies or is it female deputies that are withholding these products? Because that is inhumane, cruel, and you know what? I can't believe we're having I can't believe you have to put it in writing that you have to maintain these products for people. Like, it's common sense. It's common decency. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with the sheriff's department? Like, seriously.
Thank you. We have one in-person public comment from Melissa Camacho. No further public comments on this agenda item.
Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, okay.
I actually know where Sheriff's Department had asked for a 60-day extension for their report back. So my understanding, I'm sorry. The Sheriff's Department had asked for a 60-day extension for that written report. So I don't know if at this point we can get a commitment of that date, since we were supposed to get a written report. It seems like 60 days from the board's motion, which was June 25th. A 60-day extension would mean we'd be getting a report back by October 25th.
I believe,
No, but
I
it's
believe
60
the
days
department
from
requested an
the date
extension.
From the original date that they were supposed to return a report. So is our understanding that the sheriff's department will produce a report by October 25th? And can we expect that the Sybil Brand Commission will receive a copy of that report by that date?
I will follow up. I do not know where we're at with the report back. So once I get back, let me follow up. It may be because it's a collaboration, so we probably needed additional information with court services as well as our station jails. But I will definitely follow up with that and ensure that the Sybil Brand Commission is incorporated with that as well.
Thank you, Commander. I also wanted to ask, Captain, could you take this as a next step also to look into around the October 25th date for the report? Is that something you're able to do? Captain Walker? That's okay. Yeah, I just wanted to, Commander Montoya is also on it, but wanted to know if you could also have it on your to-do list to take back and see if the extension for the report on this agenda item, the Board of Supervisors, the board motion for the menstrual products to have a report back from LASD. There was a request for an extension, which makes it October 25th. And I really appreciate y'all being the LASD representatives. And so if both of y'all could be on seeing what that next step is, because I know y'all have to talk to other folks. But if you could take that with that deadline of October 25th back and ensuring that SBC is on CC'd on that, if both of you could take that, we would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I guess as the next step, the COC and SBC will have to produce a report back to the board. So that just delays the 60 days we have to report back to the board on that motion.
So I have been advised that there has been an agreement that the Sheriff's Department report back is due November 4th.
Okay. So then our understanding is the motion back to the board then will be due from us and COC by January 4th because we have 60 days.
That would be correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we add it to the agenda item, the report date back, Council?
Yes.
Thank you.
Especially since we'll have to coordinate with the COC on that.
Okay. No other public comment? We leave?
We have one public comment on this item. Kirby, Kirby, you're being unmuted for this agenda item.
Incorrectly, I wanted to comment on general public comment. Oops,
Okay, we'll put you back in queue.
sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, so I understand we probably have no other public comment on this agenda item.
No further public comments.
Okay. So we are through with this agenda item. And now we'll move on to our public comment.
For general public comments, we have Uch State. Scott, possibly? Scott?
You can judge society by the way they treat their prisoners. I've been in jail 3 times this year protesting the Church of Scientology. I was arrested on Friday night to keep me locked up. Over the weekend, I spent 6 days in jail, 5 nights. Conditions there are awful. Thank you for advocating for the prisoners. I've been at gunpoint about 7 times this year. to have little red dots and green dots on your head is a ordinary thing. Hopefully someone will wake up to what's going on with all the swattings. And I know that the sheriffs are involved with it, but not involved with it. But someone needs to help us. We're protesting the Church of Scientology. There's a lot of victims who grew up in there and they need your help. I've been swatted 7 times at gunpoint. Something needs to stop. My YouTube channel is Defender Advanced DOA. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment, Melissa Camacho.
Hello again, and thanks for a fantastic meeting. The subject of town halls has come up a couple of times. I would encourage both groups to investigate as to the definition of town hall. I think not all of them are what we would consider a town hall and more of just an announcement. And I think that's why the numbers run into the thousands. The OIG discussed this a little bit in the most recent Johnson report, issues of explaining what programming is available to class members in our ADA case. But the OIG may have a lot on that, and perhaps tightening up that definition would help both the reporting and the tracking. Then I think just overall want to encourage a look at the LASD budget. In the March 2021 close MCJ report, there was reference made to money needing to go to repair the east elevator in CRDF. There's a $4 billion budget. I actually don't put that all on custody. I think Luna needs to look at the division of patrol and custody and figure out where in the $4 billion you can find money to take care of the jails. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next public comment, Lupe Hervias.
So I'm just talking on behalf of the people that are there. These people need hope. Programs, returning programs back to jails. My son is no longer there. That condition that he was praising was so horrible. He mentally went off. I could tell, when I began visiting him, I noticed that he wasn't doing well. There was no help for him. It took months. Right now, he's at Metro State Hospital. He's doing better. However, I know what he went through, it will mark him for life. And that's my concern as a mom. What will I do next? And that I seen this, that the conditions, it's not just the jail, it's just the city by itself. And these people are people, my son has a mental illness and he really needed to get more support and he was just locked up with no connection, no communication.
Thank you. Next public comment in person, we have Wanda Solomon.
I just want to thank the board and all of your hard work, and I'd like to just jump on board, and the more help you can get, if I'm available, just call me, and afterwards, I don't want to say my number online, but you can reach out to me because my son is going through the system. I've been going through it for many years now, and I have not seen a really positive change in the conditions. And I'm looking forward to Officer Walker and Montella to reach out to the churches, whatever we can do as far as this feminine stuff. I mean, I can go out and buy a box of whatever they need. Just contact the churches, whatever they need. If we're collaborating together, this collaboration has to come from the community. We're part of the community, and our loved ones are in there, our sisters, our fathers, our uncles, our brothers, our sons, our daughters. So let's work together on this.
Thank you. Next public comment is online. Kirby Mum. Kirby, you've been unmuted.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, can you hear me?
We can, yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
I hope I can say this in 1 minute. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm extremely worried that the Scientology font groups Criminon, Narcanon, and Second Chance program are being linked into the prison systems. Everything that happens in Criminon, Narcanon, and Second Chance program is based on Scientology. Many of our inmates are battling addiction. Criminon, Narcanon, and Second Chance program use Scientology purification rundowns to address addiction. This is an extremely dangerous, mentally, physically, and psychologically damaging practice. There's absolutely no scientific basis to these methods. These methods are widely denounced by medical councils and psychiatric associations. Many of the inmates are presently incarcerated due to mental illness. Scientology does not believe in psychiatry or psychiatric medications, putting our inmates in grave danger. Inmates in our prisons have a constitutional right to have proper medical treatment, including psychiatric treatment, and access to genuine addiction services that are not attached to the cult of
Thank you.
Scientology.
Next public comment is from Monam. Monam, you have been unmuted.
Thank you. I'd like to finish and further. My purpose is for you to have a resounding thought, not on my watch, this ends today. Victims of high control cults such as Scientology are coming forward. I have listened to the grown children who have endured these atrocities, and their cries of pain are unmistakable. The horrifying systemic abuse they've suffered goes beyond anything Epstein or Nassar could have conceived. Now, as survivors, they are standing united in declaring, no more, not one more generation will endure, no more kids in Scientology, kids cannot consent. Narcanon, Crimion, and the First Chance program are part of the Scientology. They do not believe in mental health, and they are being denied their First Amendment rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Final public comment on this item is Audit LA. Audit LA, you have been unmuted.
Yes, I'm here to defend the defender of ants. He's protesting a cult, and he used a megaphone one day, which people do in protest. And I have email proof, okay, that the police came and they said there's no crime here. I have email proof that Scientology coerced and bugged and pestered the police to do something about it. And voila, all of a sudden, they made a case. And he spent days in jail for using a megaphone at a protest. It's unbelievable. This has to stop. You guys are being complicit, whether you know it or not, in their abuses. And of course, it always happens on a Friday. Usually, and oftentimes, with the different of the protesters on a holiday, because they know they'll get the most time, in jail before they can see a judge. You guys are complicit. And if you don't know, you know now. You've been warned. He's there before you.
Thank you. There are no further public comments on this agenda item.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our meeting on the agenda items. So I'd like to adjourn the COC and SBC joint meeting.
Not a joint meeting.
Nope, not a joint meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for correcting. But thank you for being here all together, and thank you our public guests who are here, and thank you for our sheriff's guests here. Thank you for being here. And I call this meeting to an end. Thank you.
Thank you.